Come on. Having a hard time this morning. Everybody's running a little slow. Oh, Brent says hello.
Oh.
He wanted to come visit, but Kai's setting up his maple syrup line this morning, so he's helping.
Trees on the land?
No, we've turned most of ours back into pasture. So we have 2 maple trees in the front yard, but Kai's going to do it behind the mill on the power line back there.
Oh.
So.
I suppose it's going to be starting pretty soon.
Yeah.
Eisenhower used to do it every year. Lots of trees up on that piece of land.
Dolores, why do I have technical difficulties when you come in?
Must be me, because I got one of those video clicks, or whatever it's called, where I can talk to the kids, they're right there.
Yeah.
And I can't call them, but they can call me, but every time they call me, it takes about 5 tries before it goes through and sits long enough so that we can talk. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So.
All right, I got it now.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Mildred. This is Maria Erickson for the Cook County Historical Society. I created this series to bring those history lessons that we learned around the coffee table, the kitchen table, having coffee and cookies with multiple generations, wanting to bring that to your homes, even if you haven't visited with these people or haven't seen them in a long time. It's great to see them again on this series. So we are back with Dolores Saethre this morning, and she made it to about, we were dabbling in her travels between when she was 17 and 25. And we're going to start off this morning. That was about the time she started having some babies. So I want to find out what it was like having babies when she was having babies. I'm going to have my lovely assistant, Robert, excuse me, for the frog in my throat. Robert's going to move the laptop over so you can see Dolores, because we are, you can just, and then we just need to make sure she's on the screen. Do you see her on there?
Something else.
You just need to tilt the screen a little bit.
Well, there's some.
I can see her if you just push the screen pull it towards.
Well, they've got something on there. Device protection.
Oh, that's fine. You can leave that there. Or hit OK. No, it's not a touch screen.
Oh, okay.
It's still showing her.
All right. Okay, let's get you. Okay, it's not on. I've got. Okay. McAfee. Okay, let's get you. Okay. There. That's a shot.
There we go. That is the shot. So, Dolores, what was it like when you had your first child?
Well, it wasn't very much fun. In those days, you had to go to Duluth for doctor's appointments
Okay.
every month. And we had gone down there 9 months. Well, this time we went down. We had this big truck. We had to borrow my mother and dad's car. And we went down, and the doctor examined me and everything. And he asked me, do you have twins in your family? And I said, twins? I haven't had twins. I had 4 sisters, and they never had twins. No, there's no twins in my family. So we came back home. Traded cars again down at downtown because Dad was taking care of the tourist park then too. And we got up on a hill. By then we were tired because you had to drive so far and back. So we went to bed, and early in the morning, the next morning, my water broke. Wasn't supposed to be for another month or so, and the doctor said just everything was fine. So we hurried up and got downtown, traded cars. My mother had come with me, and we started out for Duluth.
Now, 61 at that time was not like it is now.
No, well, the road was all right. It was paved and everything. There's nothing. This was October,
Okay.
and it was fine, as far as driving on it. And it was just we hurried up and got down there. We didn't make it to Duluth. We only got as far as Two Harbors. My mother said, "You better stop at the hospital here." So we did. And at that time, the hospital in Two Harbors was a great big two-story house. And we had to get in the house by going upstairs, up steps, and you get inside the delivery rooms upstairs. Had to get upstairs too.
Oh, geez.
And we got up there, and mother and Lyle stayed downstairs, I think. And I was up there in this delivery room. And it wasn't long after I got there that the baby was born. And they laid the baby across my stomach. And I kept begging them to take it off. It's too heavy. I couldn't breathe. It was just the weight there I couldn't take anymore. So they took the baby, and I kept saying, "There's something wrong." And the nurse came in. Finally, another nurse came in, and she said, "Oh my God, she's having another baby." So the doctor came and delivered another little girl. And he said something that I wondered about. And they told me she had to be taken to Duluth right now. So they took her to Duluth, and she was in the Duluth hospital for several, I don't really know how long she was there, but she was there for a while. And she had so many things wrong with her that we had to take her to St. Paul. She had things like club feet, uh, not room enough in her cavity that the intestines stayed under her skin, but they bulged out the side. She had to have a bowel on the outside so it would work because there was no opening for it. And they did that to her and took her down to St. Paul to the children's hospital down there. And she was there for a while. All in all, we had her home for maybe a week or 2 weeks. And she had to go back down. By December, it was rough. We still lived in the little house. There was no telephone. Uh, there's, I don't know, there was electricity, but there was no telephone. And the house was heated by a little kerosene stove. And no running water. And I'd get the baby home for a while, and she'd have to be back down to Duluth or St. Paul Hospital. And I don't think we had her very long home. And but between taking care of the firstborn, which was my oldest daughter, Lavona, and having a twin home, it was tough, especially no running water and the heat with the kerosene stove. The heat wasn't very steady in the house. It was up and down and cold and warm and everything. And just before Christmas that year, she got a cold or something. And Lyle had to take her down to Duluth to Dr. Smith. And I had to stay home with the other baby.
Yeah.
So he took her to Dr. Smith, and by the time he got there, she had died.
Oh.
So we only had one girl then.
Yeah.
After that, it was, you try living with a baby, having to wash clothes by hand. I didn't even have a place for a wash machine for at least a year, maybe two. And it's washing clothes and stuff by either going down to my mother-in-law's and using her wash machine, a wringer type wash machine, and which we survived. He got me a wash machine. He built this other addition to the house, so it looked like it was a T, the house, and this little addition out the back, and then the front was a bedroom and a living room. Bedroom and living room. And we made it through that year. We had one episode where we had to have a doctor. We didn't have any telephone. So Earl Krause, he was working for the telephone at the time. He came up and he put a line from my mother-in-law's house up to our place. And he waded through, I would say, at least knee-deep snow or more to put that line in for us. And we got that, and that was a big deal because we had, what was it? I can't remember what you call it. Party line.
Oh, okay.
With two other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was every time you wanted to use the telephone, there was somebody else on the line. But we made it through that winter. And I guess after that, we got better, we had another baby. We went to Duluth. No, I went to Duluth to stay with friends. My mother and dad took us down because Lyle had gone up to, he needed, where we had lots of bills for the, after the baby was born and in the hospital so much. So we had lots of bills to pay. And he went, and him and his stepfather, Henry, went to Alaska to get, he got a job and he stayed up there all summer. This was in 1951 then.
Okay.
And he got a job up there, so was making good money. He paid off all our bills that way. And I stayed home. I had to stay down at the house with my mother-in-law. So there was, let's see, Irene wasn't home. There was just the Minskook family home by then, yeah. And I stayed with them, Carolyn Chester, Roy, Lorraine, and Russell, and me and baby stayed with them. And Lavona was walking around by then. She was almost a year old.
Yeah.
Well, back up a little bit. When she was 6 months old, we went to Alaska. Both of us went.
Oh my.
And we took the baby. We went by train. No, we flew from Minneapolis. My mother and dad took us down to Minneapolis. We flew from Minneapolis to Seattle. Lyle's Aunt Adeline lived in Seattle, so we stayed overnight at Adeline's place. And then we flew to Cordova and had to change planes. And we flew to Minneapolis, flew from Minneapolis to Seattle, changed planes, flew to Anchorage, changed planes, flew to Cordova. And Lyle's sister was there, Sister Eleanor. We were there, and so we stayed with her. And she was married to a man that had 4 boys, and she had 2 girls, and the youngest girl was just a day younger than Ramona. And we stayed there almost 2 months. And the house was, it had a front porch on it. It was probably 20 feet wide, with a nice porch on it, in the kitchen, and behind it, we're in a row. The kitchen and dining area, wherever. And the living room was a little bit extra room. And behind that was the bedroom. And at the end of the house was the bathroom. And that's where we stayed for 2 months. 4 boys, what was it? Lavona and Pat and Mary. And she took care of kids overnight. So we had a lot of kids around.
Holy buckets.
We would wash clothes on sunshiny days because otherwise it was raining up there all the time.
Yeah.
So we'd wash clothes, hang them out on the porch to get dry, take all these kids for walks so they'll get tired, and and come back. We did that for until October.
Yeah.
And sometime in September, Lyle made a friend when they were working, because he was working on a power line from the town of Cordova out to the airport. And the airport was just kind of a new airport. So they were putting the electricity out to it. And he got transferred to another little town up there in Alaska. And I don't know what the guy's name was, but his wife and had 3 little girls. And he went, and his wife had a beauty shop. So I went down and stayed with the girl in the beauty shop, took Lavona with, and stayed there. We had a bedroom. The wife and the other 3 kids had another place, and he went out. They both went down or I went down to some other place in Alaska and stayed there. And the guy got transferred back after a few weeks, come back home. And we lived in a trailer house. And it was kind of a big one, but it was we made it. And and when Lyle got back, we made plane reservations to fly home again. And he got back, and we were all ready to go. And it snowed that night before Halloween. And it snowed 3 feet of snow. And we couldn't get out of Cordova until that was plowed off the airport. And they made it. They got it all cleared off, and we took off and flew back to Seattle. And Adeline and her husband met us at the plane and took us home to their house again. And then took us to the train after that. Here, Lavona is just about a month old, or not a month, but a year and a month. And she was learning to walk. And to walk down the train aisle with it, the one like this.
Yeah.
I have to change diapers on her, so 3 days of that, washing diapers in a train.
Oh.
We never had such a thing as, what do you call them, loves or...
Disposable diapers.
Yeah. And never had anything like that. It was all diapers.
Yeah.
And flannel. And she stepped on one side of the seat, and we stepped sitting up on the other side. 2 or 3 nights. We got into Minneapolis, and my mother and dad were there to pick us up and back home. And after that, the next year, 1951, Dory was born. But for that, I went right to Duluth and stayed with some friends down there in Duluth. And here again, when I was expecting Kathy, that was 6 years after Dory. Kathy was born in Two Harbors, but Two Harbors had a new hospital by then.
Oh,
Very nice new hospital. And the rest of the kids were born up here.
How many kids did you have?
Ended up with 6. So, and they were spread out, there's 2 years between some and 1 year between another one. And it's, they're kind of split. Lavona was about 15 or 16 when my youngest one, Robert, was born.
Okay.
And after Robert, we didn't have any more. So, that deal. But while we were waiting for Kathy, and I was good to go to Duluth to have her, we built the house. No, it was for Sharon. Yeah, when we were waiting for Dory, we built the house, the bigger house. And there again, he was working for Hedstrom's. He got a discount on being a cousin, he got a discount on he'd go and get some lumber and stuff. And his cousin, Wayne Henderson, helped dig out the basement where we we're going to have it. And it took a while. And Lavona and Dory, Lavona was 6 or 7. I don't know. Maybe she was even 8. I'm not sure. Anyway, Lavona and Dory helped their dad measure out the rooms. He had the basement dug in a floor in a subfloor in the house, and they had to go hold the tape that the chalk tape that you measured with, and put things out, and they helped them. One would hold the tape or the blue chalk line, and the other would hold one end, and their dad would hold the other end, and he measured out the rooms and got the things started, and they had fun.
Yeah.
I had fun holding Kathy. All she did was cry. She'd sleep all day long. Very good. And about 4 o'clock, when they would, I don't think Dory was even home. Yeah, Dory was home she wasn't in school yet, so she was 5 or 6. Of course, at that time, I don't think we had a kindergarten for them. I'm not sure. I don't think we had kindergarten. It started after that. I know Lavona went to kindergarten, but she was older than Dory.
Yeah.
It kind of messed up here with all these kids going to school and everything. At that time, the power line went up to our house. The mail, no, we didn't get mail. We got mail down at the corner, half a mile away. We lived at the top of the hill, and the mailman came around and put our mail in the mailbox at the bottom of the hill. And Lyle was still hauling water when Kathy was born. It was shortly after she was born that he was digging around up in the woods, and he found a spring. And so he dug a hole, and that spring started running pretty good. So he put a plastic pipe in from up there down to the house. So we had running water, gravity feed, but it was running water. And he had taken and made for the drain, he fixed that up with a septic tank and stuff. So, and that worked out good. And then after that, we had water all the time. And it was that well, it really put out the water. And one year, I think it was after Kathy was born, the well it was in the basement. And he dug some more, make it bigger so that it would put out more water. It was dry. It was in the summertime. It was dry, or it was just trickling in. and he fixed it so that the water would run out. And he was down in a well, not blasting, but pickaxing, getting the rock out of there because it was on solid rock by then. And there was an earthquake up in Alaska, and he come upstairs and he said, "Did you feel that?" And I said, "What?" "Well, the ground shook." And I said, "Well, what would that cause?" And a few days afterwards, he found they had this big earthquake in Alaska. That's what it was from.
Oh my.
It shook the land right down there. It wasn't much of a shake, but it was enough.
Yeah.
And there's one thing after another after that, too.
Say, are you warm enough?
I'm a little chilly. I should have brought a sweater, but I forgot it.
Can we get her?
They came in when it was time for me to come down here.
Yeah. Can we get her? And do you need any water?
No, I'm fine.
You're fine with water?
So,
Thanks, Robert.
and let's see, where else did I go? After that, Kathy was born in Two Harbors, and then David and other kids were born up at Granway. No problems then.
You had it figured out then.
Well, Dr. McDonald we had babies up here.
Okay.
And I did that for, I don't know, Sharon was born up here, and David.
I think they must have had babies and been up here until just a few years ago.
Well,
unless there was a spot
Sharon and Robert were born a year apart in 1964 and 65. And there was a hospital up here then. And it wasn't long after that, they didn't do that anymore. You had to go to Duluth again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there was some.
Yeah. So it was another long trip. I know there's many people up here of my age and those years that we had to go to Duluth. One lady I know from up here got as far as the bridge over London Road, not London Road, but the bridge on London Road into Duluth. Mm-hmm. There's a bridge that goes over the river.
Yep.
And one lady had her baby when she was being taken across the river, or across the bridge at London Road. And there's a lot of people that had their babies up down there.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why, I think it was something to do with insurance and stuff. And so then we had to start going back down there.
So was there insurance when you had Lavona and her sister?
No.
No. So you just had to pay the bill then?
Yes.
Just like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad then. We went up to Alaska and he made enough. We stayed with Eleanor. He made enough. We paid most of the bills off. In fact, I think he paid all of them off.
Yeah.
And it was, and the same with Dory. He paid those bills off that summer.
Do you remember how much it was to have a baby back then?
No, I had no idea. He wouldn't even let me look at checkbook. Anyway, Lyle, when he worked up there in Alaska that year, 1951, he worked in a gold mine.
Oh.
And I've got pictures where he's standing by looks like a big hose, and there's water coming out of the hose, and is shooting water up many feet high because they had to wash all the dirt away and get down to bedrock. And see that? Oh, okay, thank you. He had to get down into bedrock, and he had many he said he found a mastodon tooth, and they found a beaver in the frozen solid. It was the size of a bear, a small bear.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a beaver.
And you have pictures of that?
Not the beaver, and they didn't take pictures then.
Okay.
He was working. He couldn't take, but he had some guy take one picture of him behind the hose that he had to keep this thing running so that the hose would keep picking up water and shooting it at the earth, and had to come down many feet. He looked like he was about that high next to that hose thing.
Yeah.
And the water was shooting out of it, and it was kind of, I got those, they're in 35 millimeter colored slides.
Yeah.
And he had somebody take one picture there.
Yeah.
And I've got that around someplace else. One of the first other things that happened in probably 1951, maybe, when Lyle went up there. Now, this was when he was going back and forth to Point Barrow, and this is before we married. He was going up to Point or Water Island, and they were putting in electricity up there. And they had a visitor one day, a big, highly secret visitor.
Oh.
And Lyle took some pictures, and the people come and says, "You can develop the film, but you can't print them." So we ended up with a stack about a couple inches high of film in picture size. We saved that around, and it was in a box until 1980.
Yeah.
And after he died, then we decided we better do something with them, and we got a few pictures at a time because it cost 50 cents a picture to get it to print it.
Yeah.
And the one picture, when the secret person came, turned out to be President Eisenhower.
Oh, wow.
And this was before he was president, though. He was a general, and they were up there exploring for water.
Okay.
Or not water, oil.
Yeah.
Because the sod was so soaked with oil up there, the people cut it up, took it out of the ground, and put it in their houses and burned it for heat.
Yeah.
And they were getting all this little town electrified. They lived in houses. I always had them picture they lived in igloos, but they lived in houses, and they heated their houses with sod from up there. And so there was oil up there in 1947 or something like that when he was up, because between 45, when he was out of the Merchant Marines, and 48, he would go up there and spend the winter. And I've got pictures of the Eskimos having a celebration on the 4th of July. They would have a big celebration. And he showed them, they all stood in a circle around a blanket. Somebody got on the blanket, and the people pull it tight, and people would jump up and down. And dogs and polar bear. He had a picture of a polar bear that an Eskimo had killed. And you probably wouldn't remember Mark Twain or Samuel Clemens.
Yeah.
He was in an airplane, just the two of them, and Wiley Post, his pilot. And they were up there, and that's when they flew, and they crash landed on the ice. One of the people from, I think it was, where did I say? Not Barter Island, but on the mainland.
Mhm.
Port, I can't think of the name now. Anyway, this native saw the airplane crash, and he thought, instead of going to help the people out of the airplane or anything, this native went to get help. And he ran a couple of miles to get help. And he ran back. Of course, then it was too late.
Yeah.
And that's when Samuel Clemens and the pilot Wiley Post died up there.
Okay.
And that was before Lyle had been up there even. So it was pretty well civilized up there, There's a lot of people. They had this rope pulls, try to get one team across the line, and the other team is pulling on it.
Yeah.
Tug of war or something.
Yep.
And he's got pictures of that. I've got those pictures yet. We finally had them developed. My son Robert was taking a few and had even developed because it cost so much. We didn't do it all at one time. And I've got pictures on my phone that stuff pictured those. And he had quite trips. He would talk about trips that he flew up there, get to flying. He was up in I guess it was at that. I can't remember the name. If I say it once or twice, it goes out of my head. But at the village up there, he flew out to get out away from, he was coming home. And he flew with the Wayne airline, which is 2 people in a plane and lots of cargo. Well, one time he was flying with the guy, and the wind in the plane was going up and down and back and forth. It broke loose of a big box of something, and Lyle had to go in the back of the airplane, and he fastened that box down again so that it wouldn't be sliding up and down in the plane.
Yeah.
And he got out of there that time, and then another time there was something going on with the airplane, and they landed at a small village, and he got on a dog sled with a young man, or Lyle said he thought he was a teenager. And he took Lyle 50 miles across back to Fairbanks on this sled dog.
Yeah.
And then we had a picture of about 2 young girls. He had left Anchorage and was on a bus, and there was 2 bus lines. They would meet at a certain place on the road up to Alaska, and in Canada they'd meet, so that the people in Alaska got onto the Canadian bus to come back down to the States. And that bus line would leave 1 hour before the bus from Alaska got there, so the people would have to sit there and wait for a week to get on there. And on one of his trips down, he saw these 2 young ladies. He took a picture of them. He couldn't understand what they were saying when they talked because they were using a foreign language, he said. But he took their picture, and it was the first time he had ever had their pictures taken. And so when he got it developed, he sent him a picture of them.
Oh, fun.
And they was on the same bus then to get down to Moose Jaw or someplace like that in Canada.
Yeah.
So he did that for, like I said, from 45 when he graduated to 1948. That's 3 years.
Yeah.
And he would go up there and make all kinds of money, not spend a cent of it because everything was furnished.
Yeah.
And so when he decided he would come down in 1948, he had enough money to buy a truck.
Yeah.
And he wanted a Chevy truck. He went over to Ed Lynn's, which was Chevy garage at the time, and asked what kind of truck Ed had. And truck said, "Oh, you can't. You haven't got any money. You can't buy a truck. That costs too much for you." And Lyle says, "No, I want to buy a truck. I can pay cash for it." "No, you can't. You can't do that." So Lyle walked across the street to the Ford garage, and I can't remember. She used to be a teacher. Massey, Howard Massey,
Okay.
had the Ford, and he bought a brand new Ford truck and paid cash for it. I think Ed Lynn felt kind of foolish telling Lyle he didn't have any money. So then Lyle had started back and forth as the truck for logs out of the woods and stuff like that. So we got through that year.
Yeah.
And after that, it just was he worked for the light company for a while and put wire there was old wire when the wiring first came out. When Lyle and I got married in 1948, Mabel and Henry did not have electricity. They had batteries. And the windmill, or what do you call it?
Yeah.
And every time the the wind would come up, that would go around, it would charge up the batteries. And they had, I don't know how many batteries in their basement, and they had, that was their electricity. And so they put, when I can't remember this guy's name, but he owned the telephone, or the Arrowhead Electric at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Lyle worked for him putting in new wire, strung the wire from the substation, I think it was, up to the north side of Devil's Track Lake.
Hmm.
And along with that new telephone wire. And things got a little better. After that, we had our own telephone,
Yeah.
one person on it. And that's, after that, it was just one job, you know. He worked for Gene Cathcart when he had a business up here. And then Dean quit the business, and Lyle, when he got a job down at Silver Bay, they were building the Silver Bay taconite plant.
Yeah.
And I think there was taconite at Lutzen first. I think Silver Bay was first. And he would drive in a car, and they would all work down there at Silver Bay. And it was in the 50s, I think. Yeah, it was in the 50s sometime. And he belonged to the union, and he got to be superintendent or head electrician for that big job.
Yeah.
And when that quit, Taconite Harbor put in an electric plant. He was a supervisor of the electricity then, too.
Yeah.
So after that, we were doing pretty good.
Nice.
We had our own business for a while, but Lyle was one of these guys that he would not raise the price of the materials. We had to buy the materials, put it in the guy, bill them, which we did, and they would pay us. We could pay the retailers. Well, the retailers' prices would go up, but Lyle just wouldn't do it. And I told him, "You've got to raise the prices, or we're not going to make it."
Right.
And because we were paying union wages, we had two other guys working for us, helping, and he, I don't know, they just wouldn't. He paid the guys union wages and was very, they liked that. There was no trouble there. And he wouldn't raise the price of the materials.
Yeah.
And what with all the trucks, because we had at least 3 trucks, and buying electrical stuff, we just couldn't make it because he wouldn't raise the prices. So we declared to bankrupt and went down to Canada, down to Arizona. While we were down in Arizona,
You know what? I'm
You
going to
can't-
have to cut you off. I'm really
I'm
sorry.
too longest person.
No, it just means I get to come back and see you again. I'll give you a break for a few weeks, though.
Okay, but
Robert, if you want to bring the computer over.
I'd like a little bit more warning.
Right. I will try and give you more warning next time.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so very much, Dolores and Robert. If you like this, please hit the like and subscribe button at the bottom. Check out the rest of our videos at Cook County or Historic Cook County on YouTube, and you can also there's a bunch there. Coffee with Mildred. Look it up. All right, thanks.
Do you put those two together, edit it and put them together?
Someday someone probably will.
Oh.
I'm in the phase of just trying to get as many stories as I can right now, and as many people.
You still working today?
Yep.
Oh. You're busy then.